Welcome to the
Discussioneers bonus action.
technically episode 1 and 2 of the Discussioneers bonus section. So because we didn't do a
I
episode
think
1.
we'll probably just title it Discussioneers episode or Discussioneers episode 2 bonus action, right? In that kind of order.
No, I'm gonna do episode 1 and 2 bonus action. Fuck you. I'm uploading
like
shit.
Discussion after
Okay,
dark.
all right, sure.
It's in my court now. I don't know why Brian has decided to play a real life Twilight Domain cleric. You could maybe if you could
I'm
make
just repping what we're going to be talking about.
yeah, well, I mean, maybe if we could see you, we'd be able to have a straight up conversation with you. You fuck.
And I'm eating brownies, so it's just appropriate.
Worth noting, this is going to be the much less stringent and kind of organized.
Yeah, so we just had a lengthy discussion about recent Unrest Arcana, and that was interesting. But now, as part of our bonus action segment, we're going to talk about random shit and also pick questions from the chat, which I really shouldn't dive into this territory, but I'm gonna pull the first question I see here in the chat, and it says this is asked by Bernhardt1. He says for BB and Bryce, so for me and you, Bryce, who is your favorite player in your campaigns? He also he notates definitely not trying to civil war or just trying to start a civil war, but I think we're on thin ice right here. I will let you go first though.
Why me? I'm curious what Nate's answer is.
The DM is my favorite player of my campaign.
I really appreciate the master of the dungeon.
Yep, I also too. My favorite player is the DM. They put in a lot of work, and I appreciate that.
Yep.
I'm still making you go first, Bryce. You're gonna answer this one first.
I don't know. You can't pick favorites. It's like children. Like,
no, you can. You just don't tell the one you actually like first.
Exactly. No, you have a favorite. There is a favorite, but you don't say it.
Isn't there a picture out there where it's literally like a mom is talking to her two kids, and one of them is RP and the other is combat, and combat's like,
"Yep,
which one of us do you love more, Mom?" And the mom's like, "I love you both. Now go run along." And then she grabs RP and she's like, "I love you most, but don't you ever fucking tell him."
No, it's, I love you more by a lot.
Well, since you're going with the cop-out answer, I will go ahead and say that I don't really say I have a favorite player. I mean, these guys are all my close friends, my best friends. Maybe I'd give a slight advantage to Nate because I grew up with the fucker, while the rest of you I met online within the last few years.
You heard it here first, folks. I'm Matt's favorite player, and
I gotta kill Nate.
But I will say with honesty, I typically have a character, not really a player, but a character that a player plays that I tend to have a favorite just because I have just the most fun running maybe their story arc or something. So it varies, honestly. So for me, I'll just go back and think about all the campaigns we run here in the Dungeoneers. For Cult of Omar, the brother story was fantastic. So I would say it was kind of a tie between Phaser and Bryce's character in that game because the unexpected RP that caused the passing of Pafir? Was it not Pafir? That's fucking crazy. What's his character's? I don't remember your character's name now. Pavel. We'll start with a P. So your guys' RP in that game that sold it for me.
Okay, but after Pavel passed on, who was your favorite team? Huh?
So moving on to Trouble in Asbravin, probably my favorite character of that campaign was I don't remember. That was such a short it was just a short mini campaign. I don't think I really could establish a favorite.
Yeah, I feel like
I would give a slight advantage to Burns' character, actually. Not to shout out the question asker. He was in the campaign at the time. He brought back a previous character from another campaign, and as kind of like the squad leader of the pack for
I like that.
For the Dungeoneers. So being he was like this, he was a little bit higher level than the rest of the group, and he was like the leader figure. So that's probably my favorite. So I like that. Moving forward into Fate and Destiny, that's tough. But I think I'm gonna have to give the
the guy
edge.
Who wasn't even there at the beginning. It's him, obviously.
I'm not even.
No,
I actually came in halfway. He hasn't actually learned to hate me yet because I came in halfway through. That's why he's my favorite.
I haven't really hate yet. But I think my edge would be Tambuster's character actually in that game, Orgal. But that was because his character started in Trouble in Asbravin, and there was a whole tie-in arc, and I had a NPC that showed up in now all three of those games that he had direct ties in with. So I had the most fun writing for that character and also running the game. So yes, that's my non-cop-out answer.
What about Trials of Tempest though, BB? What was your favorite?
Those are just mini one-shots. You can't. That doesn't count. That was
okay. Fuck. I guess if you're giving a real answer,
yeah, you're damn right you are.
Trouble and Ask Bravo.
So going way back then to of Scrolls and Men, I think my favorite storyline was was the twins as well, actually.
Oh yeah.
Gree and Gorza, I think was the names, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm
No,
pretty
that's good
sure.
memory. That's a good pull.
Their story of like the conflict between they were two very different people that had very different desires, and that Shorty's character like eventually just took over an island and
Yeah.
that I
Game of
never
Tyrant?
planned for.
Oh, shit.
Um
Absolutely.
I think yeah, when she went and like took the sword in that whole situation, God, what was after that? Fuck. I think then it was Horde of the Dragon Queen, which
I think so.
I uh, I I struggle actually picking favorites. I don't really.
I
There are
hated
bits
all
and
of you.
pieces of. No, it's bits and pieces I loved about. Like, if I had to pick one for sure, maybe Tistrum, simply because I really liked his arc of the Void Demon fucking with him and being kind of like closed chested to like the rest of the party, and then like overcoming only through the power of his group. And that was an entire campaign thing. You actually didn't kill the demon until the prequel of the Gears Lament.
Correct. That was
Um,
interesting.
but like the other answer though, it very equally could be Kurthult and Narcissa, these characters that were complete opposites that by the end of the campaign started they got married, started a different like family and everything that split the dwarven line, and that whole story as well was pretty awesome, starting with Kurthult trying to steal, or no, Narcissa trying to steal Kurthult's legendary ale that he had from his background, to that at the very end. And
Very
then
cool.
this is probably gonna be the last one I say, because I could be here for hours talking about it, because just to show everyone's my favorite. Connor and Crichton both had Connor's experiences of just being like the voice of reason and going into danger where like no one else would, traveling ahead and with wild shape. And Crichton's fall and redemption arc of like falling to evil and then struggling almost like Vader style with like literally with a mask and everything, with was it worth to use this kind of power and the seduction of the evil side.
What about a
um
Guild's Tale, Bryce?
I I refuse to say. I don't want to say something about an ongoing campaign.
BB said a thing. Why can't you say a thing?
It's large in part though.
Is it-
It's the same thing with Horde of the Dragon Queen and technically Rise of TMX. It was the same campaign, really. I have a different thing that's my favorite about all your characters, and be it your backstory, how they interact, or how you as players like play. There's something that is my favorite about each individual person.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, Mom.
Plus, it's been there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff I couldn't say because it'd be spoilers. We're
To
not
be
that far
fair,
into
that's
it.
also a fresh campaign. For the same reason, I really couldn't pick too much of a favorite for Trouble and Asbrov. Like Guild's Tale is very, very new. We haven't really dove into a lot of, with the exception of, I mean, we're kind of in one character's story arc, but there's so much untouched territory there, right? So
And we may lose one character here within the next like
Yeah.
2 episodes because
Yeah.
he'll die of a disease.
great. Well, does that answer? Are you satisfied, Bernhardt?
Yeah.
With that
Yeah,
question?
yeah,
Starting
sick
this,
son of a bitch.
You better be.
You sadistic bastard.
Trouble on As Bravo. That's the actual name of that campaign.
So I had this thought literally on the break. So I'm gonna take over here and I'm gonna ask the next question. It's gonna be for everybody roundhouse, because obviously we've started this podcast starting with a theme of talking about unearthed arcanas, and we're gonna be doing all of the subclasses that were recently released going forward in the next few episodes. I want to look, as we've all kind of thrown in our input, especially Bryce, Nate, and I, who have been here for both episodes now. For all of you, I want you to rank from least to worst your favorite overall, not including Unearthed Arcana, we'll say, actual published class. Do not count Artificer because it's not fully released yet, because we don't know how that's going to change, if anything. Don't count Mystic, obviously, because it's broken and nobody wants that shit. The first 12 classes, Player's Handbook. Go. Who wants to go
Oh,
first?
only out of the player's handbook, huh?
Yeah. You can use in your processing thoughts. Don't consider Unearthed Arcana subclasses. Just kind of consider in your mind's eye, like the Player's Handbook subclasses and the Xanathar stuff.
Can
Those
I
are
add
actual release stuff.
addendum?
Sure.
Because you want best and worst, right?
Yeah, overall, just like my
Can
favorite
I add
class.
addendum?
My favorite class is the wizard, or my
Yeah, Can I add the addendum? No one can pick Ranger as their worst because that is the cop out answer.
Actually,
Oh,
I would actually say Ranger is my favorite. It's
Why don't
always
we?
been my
Okay, why don't we do
favorite.
this? Because
Okay.
we're gonna eventually do an episode, a main discussion about the Ranger. So we'll say for this discussion, assume that we're talking about Ranger, the revised Ranger that we've done an in-house revision of on the
Okay.
channel. So you can use that as your decisive
Okay.
factor. Who wants to go first?
I'm curious
Shoot,
on
I'm
what Brian has to say
think.
now. I don't believe anyone likes Ranger, but okay. And I say that as someone that plays a Ranger.
So did Brian? Are you saying the Ranger's your first?
If you told me I had to play a D&D game right now without knowing anything about what I'm doing, any of my party members, I would immediately choose one of two options. It would either be an Eldritch Knight, just because I love the ability to summon weapons.
We're not talking about subclasses here. I just want
No,
overall
I know that's
classes.
what I'm saying. And since that's not an option, if you just told me a class, it would be Ranger.
Really? Okay.
Because when I think of a fantasy game or a fantasy world, my first big experience with fantasy was Lord of the Rings.
I mean,
Like-
Aragorn is technically a Ranger, sure.
Growing up, I played fantasy video games, I played and read fantasy books. The Ranger was always the thing that stood out to me. So even though in fifth edition, the Ranger's trash. Wizards botched it a little bit.
They
A
really
little
did.
bit.
They really
But
did.
the flavor of what a Ranger is still there.
I get you.
And that type of character is always going to be the character true to my heart I'm going to enjoy playing, even if I'm not going to be the most useful person in the party.
Who doesn't want to be Strider? I mean, that's like one of the quintessential
know,
like
yeah.
badasses.
In
of-
my head, my character will
Striders.
always be that character. Like my ideal character will always be that character that walks up with a long bow in one hand and a long sword in the other,
Yep.
and is not afraid to not only take on the horde, but run up to the biggest baddie in the room. And that's just in my mind. That is my favorite class. That is my epitome of a fantasy character.
So what's your
I'm also racist, yeah, according to Byrne.
Oh,
well, because
come
you have
on,
your
bro.
favorite enemies. You have someone that you especially hate.
Humanoids.
Fucking
All humanoids.
walking up
Everyone.
on two
I am.
legs and
I hate
Fucking
everyone.
living.
bipedals.
So what's your least favorite?
My least favorite class is actually going to be, for the longest time, it just recently started changing, but it's Druid. For the longest time, I actually
Really?
hated Druid. As a person who loved Ranger, I hated Druid because in my mind, why would I want to play a class whose whole theme is I'm going to change into something that's not my class?
I
Okay.
get you.
All right, that's an interesting poll. Nate, I'm gonna put you on the spot next.
I think mine's. I don't know. It's rough. I think
You have the
My
most difficult choice here
favorite-
because the main class you've been playing for the past like 2 years has been an
Yeah.
unearthed Arcana class that's gone through some major revisions.
Yeah.
So this is a bit of
I
a
haven't
difficult
chosen
ask
my
for you.
class.
I have just now started playing a class that is a real class.
You're a real
I-
boy now.
I think my favorite class might be the sorcerer.
Ooh.
And I
okay.
would choose the sorcerer out of any of the caster classes because I think it has the most versatility on how and why you have your magical abilities.
In your blood.
Sometimes you don't even know why. Whereas, like, if you're a warlock, you went
took
and
a
you made a
pact.
deal with somebody. You're a druid. You have some long family.
Nature has given it to
yeah,
you.
like you've been in
You're
nature
channeling from
forever.
nature.
So, yeah. So I like that a lot, and I like spellcasters.
I mean,
Spellcasters are nice.
They're fun.
I'll agree. Like, I think a big reason why the biggest pull for a warlock, right, is the RP of like that thing with your patron.
I'm gonna
like
deal with the
DM
devil.
is, like,
My daddy
But-
issues.
You can do the same thing with the sorcerer.
Exactly, sorcerer is better because I think warlock it gets a little adversarial, and eventually you reach an ultimate point of you kind of have to like you might have to like break your pact or something, and then you might not be playing a warlock anymore, or maybe depending on how your DM
It just
rules
depends
it.
on how you. Yeah, it depends on what you can always.
Sorcerer. I think there's definitely in that same vein a lot of cool backstory stuff you could do with your bloodline, where this magic comes from, and what that could mean.
I feel like for a warlock, like your story is based on your god or your patron. A sorcerer, your story is based off of you because it's your
Yeah.
blood that is causing this.
Flavor wise, it's unique. It's pretty cool. Okay. So what about
Yeah.
your least favorite class?
It's okay. You can hate rangers. I understand.
My my least favorite wouldn't be ranger, even if it was just the base ranger. Even I think fighters are extremely boring.
I can.
Really?
Yeah, I can
Interesting.
kind of understand that.
it's just so basic.
Like they're good, but they're good to the extent of you don't have to do anything.
They're
extra.
good fighters, yeah.
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 But
Fighters are
it's
good fighters.
so
Play a
basic.
human
Yeah,
fighter
exactly.
champion and don't do anything.
Yeah, it's
That
just
that
so
subclass
dry.
is incredibly boring, but
I don't know why. Unless you're brand new to D&D, why would you play a champion? Unless you're subclassing.
if you're brand new to D&D, absolutely. Otherwise, yeah, it's so boring. You need like
don't-
if your DM's not awarding you magical items, there's
Yeah,
no sustenance to that
Burns,
class.
you're right.
I can't.
Fighter is the basic bitch
Yeah.
of D&D.
So
Yep,
Bryce,
is fighter the oldest character that or class that has stayed the same? Because like there wasn't even a cleric before. Like cleric didn't
The-
exist even in first edition.
I wish I was
Yeah,
more
the
familiar
rogue.
to give you a proper answer. I really don't
I-
know, to be fair,
I
but
actually am pretty familiar with that. So the original classes, and the only reason I know as much as I do is my manager that I actually run my game for right now. The only game he's ever played is first edition.
really.
Like he still has the modules.
Okay.
That'd be
The
fun,
fighter
though.
is the only class that has actually stayed a solid thing. It hasn't changed names. It hasn't changed style.
Right.
It's always been that martial in your face. Even the rogue used to be called the thief,
Mm-hmm.
and it eventually changed into the ranger kind of style, and then they split. And then so no matter what classes you look at that we have now, the fighter's the only one that has actually been there since the beginning.
I did not know that. That's pretty cool.
Boring.
So my
So-
answer is gonna be pretty boring. I think
Wizard.
everyone can guess. Wizard's my favorite just because I get bored if I'm not playing something if I'm playing something that doesn't have spellcasting, just because there is such a wide variety that you can do with spells.
Sure. Versatility
Like
for
I
sure.
told you guys when I played for the first time, I gravitated toward a wizard because I just think spellcasting's fucking cool.
Because it
And
is.
wizards get the widest variety of spells, except for clerics and druids. But as an arcane caster, they get the most spells to know and can swap between them and have the flavor of just being a nerd, right? You're not just someone that was lucky or made a deal. You're someone that's like worked hard and learned
Yeah.
like the science of
Man,
magic.
you got to get that 18 strength wizard though. Like you got to be that wizard that like works out every other day. You know?
Never skips leg day.
Lifting books.
Never- Yeah.
Oh,
Whew.
that's funny. That's a really
Um,
good
and
image.
the one thing I'll say is the only thing that I don't like about wizards is actually I think a lot of their choices are kind of meh. They have like some of the most subclasses, and I think most of them just don't matter at all.
Divination.
That's my own opinion. But as for worst, it's almost a tie between Ranger for its balancing issues, like base game. But I would actually say I would have more fun with that, just flavor wise, than I would my least favorite being a Warlock.
I had a feeling that's what you were gonna say.
Because even though it's a spellcaster, I dislike how limited you are on how many spells you know, how many spells you can cast. I think the balancing of its own abilities that it gets for any of its subclasses or everything else, its own just abilities like invocations, unless you pick some of the better ones, are kind of eh. I think
Yeah, I guess-
overall it's a class that needs arguably more tweaking than the Ranger.
I can
So
understand that. As a wizard fan hating the warlock, it's kind of like your cardinal opposite.
right.
Kinda, yeah. I mean,
A bunch of freebies, and then you're limited by it.
I would say probably my favorite class is also the wizard, and for different reasons than you. I think what's interesting for me is when I also love the versatility of spellcasting. I always love it's like almost like playing like when you're in combat, almost like playing a puzzle game in your head. Like what could be
Yeah.
the most beneficial? Do I go utility? Do I go damage? And whereas other classes, they typically favor to one particular role, which they do exceptionally well, and there's nothing wrong against those. Like, the rogue just outputting massive amounts of sneak attack damage and stuff. But the wizard, you're playing a puzzle game. It's like playing two games in one. You have your normal game going on, and you're trying to figure out what to do. So that, and combined with the fact that other casters, they're getting all their spells either on level, and that's what they get, or a lot of classes in this edition of the game have access to every one of their spells, and they're changing what prepared. The wizard has this own unique mechanic where your progression is actually tied to some of the loot you find. You're always trying to go out. Oops. The wizard is the researcher, right? And it thematically goes into, you want to be a researcher? You can actually do it to learn more spells by finding those spell scrolls and stuff like that.
And
Unfortunately-
unfortunately, I've had this happen to me though.
Yeah.
You can lose your spellbook, and I feel that
Yeah.
that was what you were about
Yes.
to say. Is you can lose
Yes.
your spellbook and lose all spells that you don't have repaired, and this
Ooh,
happened
yes.
to me, and it's very shitty.
Yeah, so it becomes this treasurable item to you, and
That you
as
will
well
literally
as
kill to keep.
Yeah,
Yes, so to be
it's
careful.
cool.
So It does kind of heavily rely on your DM too, because a DM is not going to reward you the possibilities to use that ability, that portion of the wizard that I find so
very
sad
rarely
when it gets
see a wizard
ignored.
using that.
Yeah,
If
so
you never find spell scrolls, then
Yeah, like I always find out like the wizards will never actually like find a way to transfer these. Like they'll come to a point where the wizard will be in a town and the DM has to like actually stop because
Right.
the wizard's like, hey, I'm gonna go find somebody I can get spells from, and
Mhm.
the DM won't even say, okay, you're gonna transfer them into your spell book. It's literally, okay, go buy your spells.
yeah,
Like that
so
flavor of your spell book being important is lost.
yeah, so that's my reasoning. My worst favorite, it's pretty tough. At one
Worst
point,
favorite?
or my least favorite, yeah. At one point, I would have said Ranger, but like I said, we've kind of fixed
Everybody hates
that.
on the
We've kind of
Ranger.
fixed that, and I actually really like the things that we've done with Ranger, so that's not there anymore. I almost would have said Warlock at one point, but again, I can get why people dislike the Warlock, but now that I currently have a game with someone who's playing a Warlock and is being way more effective than I've ever thought a Warlock could be. So there's definitely possibilities for a Warlock to be extremely good. So I'm not going to go that route. I almost said Fighter to agree with Nate because it is a martial class. So basically, your whole shtick is to hit shit, and which is fine. There's nothing wrong against that. It's just kind of against what I normally would like when I like spellcasters and stuff. But there's actually a lot of really neat subclasses for fighters out there, especially now with Xanathar's out, where you have a lot more options. Like Battlemaster, you have like maneuvers and stuff. So my least
look at
favorite,
Tyreme. He has some interesting stuff that he can pull
Right.
outside of
right?
normal fighter.
If you're going based on subclasses, absolute champion fighter. Don't play that unless you're brand new to the game. It's boring.
Yep, never play
My
Ranger
least
fighter.
favorite though is actually, believe it or not, because I played one for a good long time, the Barbarian.
Mm.
Because the Barbarian, its whole shtick is
It's like a less
It's-
variety fighter.
it's mostly like I'm a tank, which is great. I mean, people love playing those roles in like video games, like if you play like Overwatch and stuff like that. Like you're gonna soak a lot of damage, but your whole shtick really is just I attack twice. That's
Yeah,
kind of
it's-
it.
I get
So-
angry. Now I'm a fighter.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not-
like I get
I'm
to
not-
do whatever stupid thing I want.
I'm not shitting on the class. I love how each class is so diverse and they fit a certain role and they do what they do well. But I would say personally, my favorite one to play, even though I've played one for a while, is Barbarian.
I'll say, I mean, even though like for my least favorite, like Warlock, I think every class is interesting because you can do all sorts of flavor and stuff with it. Like everything has its place. Just some of them, meh.
Which
Well, like even for me, like the druid I said was my least favorite, and there's subclasses that I like. I look at that, I'm like, holy crap, this would be just a fun thing to dip into for a little bit.
And even saying Barbarian's my least favorite, my one of my favorite arcs to run is for a player who's playing a Barbarian in my game. So they're not. I don't hate them. I just find it less interesting for me, my personal taste, to play a Barbarian than I would any caster or something.
What were you gonna say, Nate?
I was gonna say that is a good segue into a question that I had
Ooh, please.
to pose.
I like segues.
Nate has
Um,
questions.
Yeah, I know, right? When you are choosing a character to play, do you more so lean towards the flavor and RP possibilities, or do you more so lean towards the I want to eventually have a very strong character, or do you look at your level 20 abilities and say, man, I really want to get this ability?
That's a super good question. I am going to take
No,
the reins
don't
on
you
answering this
fucking-
first because everybody knows the answer. I random roll. I random roll every time.
True.
Everyone knows Davos is a randomly rolled character.
It's a randomly rolled. My opinion is I just want to randomly roll, see what I'm going to play, and then from there I let my creative juices flow with what's on my paper. So I'm like, okay, for Davos, for instance, and the campaign I play in Bryce's, I rolled for race, got halfling, rolled for class, rogue. I'm like, okay, so now how do I want to make this character?
No,
and then
you
that's
wanna-
go ahead.
Hold on. I want people to know how fucking stringent he is because
Okay.
previously he rolled another character, and I won't spoil what it was, but he rolled a different character from what he was playing now. Different, I think it was the same class but different subclass.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote out a bunch of backstory. I had notes on what his shit was, and like a week or two later, he's like, "I just realized I didn't have this race in the random roll table,
Yep.
so I want to do it again." I'm like,
Yes.
"You don't have
That
to."
is
And I was
correct.
like, "Nope, I'm gonna do
Have
it."
to do
And
it.
he ended up with Davos.
Yep. So because one race wasn't in my roll chart, I had to re-roll it because it felt like I was cheating.
That's how
100%
stringent
true
this
story.
fucker is.
That's 100% a true story. So yeah, once I have the class and race and everything laid out, then I start using my own creative juices, and that's when my brain kicks in. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write what I want based on this race and class. That's me. I random roll. That's my answer.
I think we know Brian's.
Yeah, no, Brian, you're next. You're absolutely next because we all know the answer.
Well, the answer actually might not be what you think. I
So you're
actually
gonna lie to us.
I don't. I don't pick my classes or the characters I'm going to be playing based on their power level. I pick it based on the theme I want first, and then I
Then
try to find the most
out how
powerful
to do it.
theme
There it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
There it is.
that I can do with it. So, like for instance, like the character I'm playing for the Guild's Tale, I'm not going to spoil what I am, but like I looked into it, I'm like, man, these are really fun. I really like this. And what if it was like this? And what if it was like this? And then I was like, oh my god, wait, there's a class that does that, and there's a class that does that. Do they work well together? No. What about this? Because this, and oh, look, they work really well together. And then all of a sudden, your DM hates you, and everybody calls you a min-maxer.
Well, it's because you are a
Brian's
min-maxer.
the most min-max non-min-maxer.
I am the minimal maxer.
Every group I feel like has a min-maxer, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but there are just some players that just love to like their idea of fun is being the most effective. There's nothing wrong with that per se.
It's
I like
also
to think
very
that,
helpful
yeah,
in the game.
Brian is
I
our
do-
min-maxer.
I am definitely, I will not lie and say I'm not a min-maxer. I do definitely enjoy doing the most I can with what I have. But at the same time, I am fully one who understands that I will make sacrifices for the rest of the party to make sure that they don't feel like I'm doing everything.
That's I'm with you, bro, Brian. I consider myself a min-maxer with 100%. There are certain things I will just never play because there are things that are stronger than it that
That is
I
true.
know I would like the flavor, but I'm gonna have less fun in combat, which is a large part of the game, right?
I would really love playing a fighter champion.
But my go-to is usually it's difficult to answer because I actually have 3 different or like 2 or 3 different points I usually enter in, and it's different per character. Either I'll have a theme, a race, or a class I want to play, right? So for Marsk's situation, I wanted the theme of I want to be the gunslinger, right? It ended up being a pretty cut and dry, like standard. My parents died, and I had a
The
difficult-
Edge Lord has arrived.
But we had just come out with the rules for the guns, and everything was like, I want to use these, and I love the idea of a gunslinger, the guy that's like the quick draw, duster and everything, right? So that's where that went from. Was like, well, to do that, I need to be variant human to get the gunmaster feature or whatever. That went from there. For my next character, which I'm not going to spoil what it is, but for BB's next game, I picked a race, and that was where I started. Was I didn't know what class. No, I knew I want to play wizard, but my first thought was there's a certain race I want to play, and I need to figure out a way that like makes sense for this to fit together because I love the theme of like this racial type. Like role play wise, what their history means and what their abilities kind of like infer.
So
on the
human again,
character.
right? Because there's
So
just
obviously
so
I went
interesting.
variant human because
Yeah,
man, is that
interesting.
powerful.
Man, free feats. I'm glad my DM allows them.
It's so good. So I don't have like a one way that I decide. It's usually like a mix of that.
Also, just as fact, I'm not afraid to spoil what my character is going to be for the next campaign because I'm probably going to change it in like 2 weeks.
That's true. Of all people, Brian does have the most listed.
I have right now. Let me open up my notebook. I have a total of 5, 10. I have 34 characters made, ready for use right now.
Jesus,
Yeah, you
dude.
beat me by a great margin. I think I assume BB. Do you know do I beat at least for Fate and Destiny? Do I beat everyone else for like because Mars was like my 3rd or 4th character that I made.
That's
I
true.
literally
So
made Zeph to fit the
yeah.
story. Like I've made him to fill in your guys' party.
yeah, that's
So I
true.
don't- I didn't really
You did
go
swap
crazy
out
on that one.
your characters a whole
Maybe you're
bunch.
muted.
You're muted.
BB, you're muted.
Oh,
BB,
I'm
come
muted.
back.
I'm muted in Discord, not in.
Yep.
I know. Yeah, but yeah, sorry, I apologize. But yeah, no, you definitely swapped out people more. Like I feel like Brian has a lot of
Although
characters, but you're the ones who changes last minute. You're like, oh, I don't want to do this. I want to do this.
yeah,
And
I
you swap
give
them
no
out last
warning.
minute all the
To be
time.
fair, part of that did you just swap to the 2B? Okay, all right, never mind.
Yeah, you
Don't worry
he
about that.
did.
Don't worry about that.
The panic he did.
My first character, I guess it doesn't matter if I say this, right? I mean,
Is
don't
it
even
a character?
remember-
Not playing it, so
Yeah, if you're not playing it.
because I'm curious, actually, I don't remember now, BB. My first character, and I assume this got revealed in the story by now, but my first character was going to be a Warforged cleric. I was going to be either a Forge Master or a Tinkerer because I love the only thing I love as much as wizards is robots. Robots are
Yep.
fucking cool.
A robot
Um,
wizard.
But you were like, if you really want to do this, that's fine, but
Yeah.
it'll be really fucking difficult with the story of this game, and you wouldn't tell me why. So I was like,
Yeah.
all right, fine, I'll play something else.
Yep. There was a whole thing on robots that I had going forward because I didn't think anybody was going to play one, and then you're like, and then of course, as soon as you start planning for something, your players goes
So was that
do
what
this. I'm like,
was that the issue? Was that arc with the
yes.
in the Border
Canis.
Kingdoms?
Yep.
Oh.
The with the Border
This is
Border
before
Kingdom
you,
arc
Brian.
where
Yeah, so
the
this is
rise of the
earlier than me.
robots and they're all being
Where
being
every
controlled because
Warforged
every
was
Warforged
being
was
controlled.
turned, and they basically it would have been like, I don't know.
I had to figure out some MacGuffin that
You were corrupted.
Looking back, that's actually a good little sidebar here. I will say, looking back, I'm a little upset that I did that. I was so worried because I was investing so much time in writing the early stages of the campaign. I had all these arcs planned out. But when you pitched that idea, and me not necessarily turning you down, but like really strongly suggesting not going there, I wish I wouldn't have done that because I was so that was a DM mistake that I've learned, and I don't want to do again. Where I get so invested in what's going on that I don't want that idea to be ruined because of what you're playing. Realistically, looking back, I could have easily made that a really cool story arc, like having you get whisked away and then you get to play a temporary character. Like there's so much shit, and I want to just say now, 3-4 years later, I apologize. I shouldn't have done that. That was a shitty
apology
move.
accepted. I will
Yeah.
say, I'm super happy with Marsk. I've loved his story. I mean, one of the most powerful scenes in my mind still is the confrontation in Baldur's Gate, with the group and everything. I thought that was beautiful, but definitely I can agree. Like there could have been some cool moments of like, what if he did get corrupted and the party had to like save them or
Yeah, there's
or
so many
some-
things I could have done, and that was just me getting a little bit tunnel vision on my story design and getting afraid, like, oh, I no, but
But that comes with experience, right? Is
Lesson learned.
becoming more and more comfortable with making shit on the fly, right? I think that's like the making of a good DM is getting comfortable in your own skin.
I have delved
kind of.
into chaos where I just don't make notes anymore. And it's just stuff. I don't know what I'm doing
mean-
until I show up to the session.
there you
And
go.
that can work. Honestly, I think the more and more you can ad lib, the better you are as a DM. Like,
And little Tommy fell down a well.
but just being able to make it's all lying, right? That's
That's
the whole
the-
point.
DMing is lying with flavor.
So long as your players believe that's how it was always meant to be, if it
Right.
makes sense, then
Like that
That's
other
great.
meme where the player takes the DM's notes and he looks at the notes and he's like,
it's
it's blank. And
yeah.
then the DM's just like,
I don't know. Did I answer my own question? I don't remember.
No, I don't think
No,
you
I
did.
don't
We got
think
we
you
got, we
did.
got into too many tangents, but that's the point of
Alright.
bonus action because we did this in the
Yeah,
first
I
episode a
just
lot,
couldn't
and now
remember
we're
if I answered first or not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
how do
no.
you make your character's name? I'm curious.
yeah. Do
I-
you plan your? Is there like a
I-
chart?
I have a flow chart that I follow every single time.
Am I feeling angry?
No, yes or no? No. I have not as many characters pre-made as you do, Brian. I've got like I think 10 total that I have.
wow. I didn't even
a
know you had
rough
that much.
outline of a backstory made and
Do you
everything
have their
else
stats rolled out?
figured out. I rolled their stats already. It's crazy.
Yeah, and
It's
mine
all
are all
20.
20s.
Wow.
But I think all but
This is
all
the part
but
where I think I'm sorry.
one or two have been purely I wrote a story for this character and then I figured out what kind of character I had an idea for a story and then I made a character that would fit into what kind of story that I had. So it's pretty much purely based off of RP and backstory and stuff like that.
That's awesome because
Um,
it's players like you that are like mid-max type of players that will tend to. And this that's not meant to be an insult. I'm just saying like because min-max players will obviously use things that are the most effective, right? So that means they'll never really use some of the maybe not considered like underwhelmed like classes.
Yeah.
Like you'll still play those despite the fact just
Yeah,
because it fits with
like
the.
for Tarek, like I almost called you Marsk. Like Bryce said, Marsk was invented because we now have rules for guns, and guns are fucking cool. Let's do that.
Yeah.
I was the same exact way. It was, Matt, I really want to play as a character that uses guns. Oh well, we just so happen to have come up with rules for black powder and gunpowder and stuff now. And so I'm like, all right, let's do it. And I'm like, okay, I could go ranger, I could go fighter and use guns, but
Like, hey,
liked
there's
the
this
idea of
unearthed arcana
having the
artificer that
spell
has a gun.
class. Yeah, the spellcaster was still calling to me.
Sure.
And all the flavor of like being part alchemist, part spellcaster, still having this magical gun, like that was all really really cool.
That's cool.
I mean, I'll say like, and I just I never thought about this before, but something that like I don't do like, the creation of Reed was a hugely cooperative. Like, how much of that character did you have before we sat down for your session 0, Nate? Like, I don't.
Reed is the character that I had the least amount of. I went into it as this is going to be a pretty much completely blank slate. I'm giving Bryce power to do
Yeah, that
anything.
was
I mean,
a.
even with the bullet points that I sent you for like before session 0, it's like, and this happens, and I have no idea. Like,
Yeah, you basically had like your family, some events that happened, and there was no location
that's
or
it.
anything.
I had
And
nothing
the
tragic
creation of
happen in
Reed
my
was a
life.
huge.
Like,
Reed was a hugely cooperative character creation. Like we sat down for that session 0.
mhm.
It's like a lot of people's, but like some people had much more in depth. Like they knew what their backstory was. Versus yours was like we sat down and flavored in a town and an area because you like point to an area and we're like, well, what about there? And then we like hashed back and forth and
Mhm.
really like Reed basically like spawned in with the world around him. That's something I don't do as a character or as a player.
I get
Obviously,
carried away.
I didn't worry about it as Marsk because we are in we're in Faerun, so I was like, I know it's just Faerun, right? So I just based on the character. But even in BB's new campaign, I didn't really ask any questions about the world or the local area. I just had
Yeah.
a class and a race in mind, and that was all I
I mean,
really thought about making a character.
even for Fate and Destiny, even in the set world of Faerun, um, in this now newly destroyed and rebuilt Faerun, even still, I was basically still created the town that I came from, and even though there was a set world and everything, I still came up with the idea of everything, and then I basically went, here's my town. This is where he came from. Where does it fit in your world? And he just kind of
That's true.
kind of
We
makes
did
sense that
we
it would
did
be
go
over
back and
here.
forth for a long
Yeah.
time.
Even
on
me,
that.
I'm still trying to get BB to send me certain like information so that my character can fill in the blanks for his stuff.
Yeah, my problem
Well,
with that is like we still have quite a bit left in Fate and Destiny. So well, we've been kind of doing a little bit of setup towards the next campaign, just so we have. I really just want to get the ideas out there, so when comes time to like, hey, we're about to switch the campaign, we're not last minute like, oh god.
yeah,
But the
then
problem,
you tell somebody like me like that, and I'll send you like a 6-paragraph like
Yeah.
story describing my character's first scene.
the problem with that is like in my off time, I'm still like creating like the continent and the surrounding area in which the campaign's going to start, and I don't have a lot done yet. So when you guys come back at me, like initially I was like, okay,
Right.
come up with a character, race, and all that good stuff, so that way you have it in the
Yeah.
back burner. If you need to change it, that's fine. And nothing's locked and set in stone, which people have already changed a couple of times, Brian. And then they come back at me and they're like, well, what about this? I'm like, oh shit, well, I didn't think about this. You guys are asking me legitimate questions that I should know, but I don't have the area ready. So that's been a little bit of complication.
My favorite thing.
Yeah.
All right,
so,
well now
that
I have to
is-
reroll as a 17th level fighter with a 3-level barbarian.
Brian's
Don't worry
doing all
about the
world building
details.
for you. He's gonna make enough characters. He's gonna flesh out your entire
I'm gonna
world.
give you enough
You'll have your own
NPCs for
adventuring
every
party.
BB, get in touch with me. I'll just send you like 30 names,
Mhm.
and then you can just use these as key NPCs, and I'll just pretend I don't know them.
I will say, Brian is that player that, like I was saying, I don't do this, and Nate's on the the middle end of this. I would say Brian's on the fucking like extreme end of this, where he sent me a document with
Oh.
like scenes and dialogue of
No,
his character's backstory.
I was actually going to say the same thing when he said
Oh.
that, because it's completely what I gave you is night and day from what I gave Matt for
Yeah.
Tarek. For Tarek, I literally wrote a short story
You did?
with dialogue, paragraphs of like, and for you,
100%.
I sent you like 10 bullet points.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of went down that path though, because a lot of the times I understand like as a DM now, kind of when people want to make characters, it can be an information overload when they try to give you like a 4 to 5 paragraph description of their character and what they want their character to be like in your world. Whereas a character or a player that gives you like a 10 or 15 bullet point of key things about their character
It's
and their
better.
past, it gives you more freedom as the DM to work
Yeah.
it into your game rather
So-
than here's the solid wall, put that wall in a place where it makes sense.
I have a question for everyone here then, because I'm curious. Do you think this isn't just like a player thing, but also based on the campaign? Because I feel like maybe Fate and Destiny, because I don't think anyone really tied it down to any locations, because it's more of a game about the characters rather than the world. I don't think any of us really like care about the world like building per se. Like the NPCs in the story that is like unique to BB's game, yes, but like the world is fair and it's like, well, this is like the standard D&D setting. We're not really like we're not asking like, oh, what are half orcs like? What are,
It's a well-traveled map.
yeah, so it's like not so much of a tie versus, BB's new game and my new game where the world is new, exploration's a bigger deal, right? That there's more of an incentive to tie your character to like locations, to how the world works, that kind of thing, leaving it more open.
I think,
Factions,
I mean,
countrysides.
for me, it's player based because even though I will send you 10 bullet points, I will for my own
Yeah, I was gonna say
like
the exact
for
same
me,
thing.
I will have
You-
short story. I will literally have a short story you could put into a hardcover book, and you have a story of this person's life up
Like
until a certain point, and that's for me, I guess, more so than for the
Fair.
game. But
I
like
get
that
you.
that's a good point too, is because like for the Bryce, you said I sent you some like a long thing. For each of those bullet points that had like a small part of the story, I had a paragraph written out for me of what that actually was. So I feel like, especially in like, even I joined Fate and Destiny's far too too late to really put more impact. When BB invited me to that game, my more focus was, okay, well, I'm playing with these guys. What can I do to help? I'm coming in late. This is their world. I'm just helping them along in it. And if I had been there at the start, 100%, I would have probably done similar to Nate, where I have wanted a key part of the game, a key part of the world. But because you're joining something a little later in, or you're joining something at a higher level, sometimes that does take away from it, because you're just like, well, at this point, what I want, or probably what my character would have wanted, or where he came from, might be irrelevant.
No, I get you.
Well, good stuff. I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. We had a good, nice little talk there, over the place, like the nature of the bonus action is supposed to do. So I think, yeah, let's go ahead and does anybody else have any final thoughts they want to touch on before we wrap things up? Are we good? Skedaddle on out of here.
not really.
Rune Fighter, Runes, and Barbarian Rage work together, guys. Keep that in mind.
Thanks, Midmaxer. We
fucking-
appreciate it.
Why?
No, that's and I know I want to play it so bad.
Anyways, thank you so much for watching, everybody. Hope whether you're seeing this on Twitch or YouTube, either or, we appreciate it. We will be back next week. That's Sunday. November something 2nd, maybe. No, 3rd. November 3rd.
It's October 34th.
It's November 3rd. Yeah. So we'll be back next Sunday, November 3rd. We're going to talk about the Paladin and was it Bard? Yeah, Bard subclasses that were released in Unearthed Arcana in recent months, days, weeks, I don't know. And obviously go on another bonus action tangent, as we are now wont to do. I think this was a lot more successful than trying to jam-pack everything into an hour, when that didn't obviously work very well in our first episode. So tell us what you
Considering
think.
even this time, going over those 3 Unearthed Arcana with nothing else, side tangent really
Right.
took over an hour anyways.
Yeah, which is good. That's kind of, I think even that, we're going to get better as that goes, but at least it's not 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, thanks for watching, guys. Tell us what you think. Feel free. I mean, since this is going on YouTube and stuff, for either this episode or back on the Unearthed Arcana main segment of this episode of Discussioneers, tell us what you think. What are your opinions on that on all the shit that we talk about? So either way, we will see you guys next time. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'm not going to say the stupid sign off that Bryce said last time, because that's stupid. Nope. Bye,
Keep
everybody.
the discussion going.
No, fuck. He said it. He said it. He said it. God
Bonus
damn it.
action discussion.
We're out of here.